Welcome to the Hive, you bees. We're going to do this one again, and we have a really cool show today. It's the early day Speedway. We're going to talk about the first United States Speedway champion, and it was in 1925. Also, this guy won the first unofficial world championship, but it was sort of taken away, I guess. And we have a great show tomorrow night with Greg Hazaroth. And we have Larry Huffman coming, and hopefully Bruce Penhall. So we have some really great shows on YouTube. Please like and subscribe, ring the bell so you can have notifications of those shows. They're going to be really great. But we're going to talk about the very first Speedway champion ever in the United States in 1925. That was almost 100 years ago. And the late Sprouts Elder won that championship. He won it. Sprouts, his real name is James Lloyd Elder, better known as Sprouts Elder. How would you like the name Sprouts? That's an interesting name. There's not a lot about Sprouts that people know about. He's not a common household name, but he was an amazing writer nonetheless. And he was born August 4th, 1904. Do you remember 1904? No, you don't remember that. That was before your time and my time. Don't remember those days in the 1900s, the early 1900s, long time ago. And he was born in Fresno, California. Do you know Fresno? It's up Central California, almost to San Francisco. He actually lived 53 years, and he passed away August 8th, 1957. Do you remember those years? I don't remember those years. But anyway, Sprouts wanted to be like a horse jockey, not a disc jockey on a radio station, but a horse jockey at like Santa Anita Park. He wanted to race those horses around the circle track, the long mile track. But one of his problems is that he kept growing. He kept growing. Sprouts kept growing, and he's like, so stop growing. I want to be like 5 foot tall, so I could be a jockey. But he kept growing to like 6 feet and maybe a little bit over 6 feet tall. And Sprouts was too tall to be a jockey. So that was the reason they called him Sprouts, because he was sprouting up tall like a grass, like a flower. He was sprouting in the air. He was over 6 feet tall. That's why they call him Sprouts, because he was like a flower. He was sprouting. Very funny name. I'm glad they don't call me Sprouts, because that would be like terrible for me. But back in the 1900s, I guess that was like cool name. Like, my name is Sprouts and I am cool. I don't know, but that's an interesting name, and that's his name. So he was actually working for a motorcycle shop, his first job, and he just fell in love with motorcycles when he was working in the shop. And he said, hey, I'm gonna try racing these motorcycles. So he got a motorcycle and started riding it, and he became pretty good, and that was really great. He actually first he started riding the bikes, and then he progressed into the Speedway when he was probably 16 or 17 years old. And he learned to race one of the last surviving board tracks racing. Do you know what the board track racing is? Do you know? I don't know. But no, I do know. I didn't know what the board track is. I mean, who the heck knows? It's actually board track, not like board, like you're bored, you're sleeping, but board like wood, it's like the wooden track. And he actually started that back in the 1900s. 1910 to 1920 is when they did board track racing. And actually, it was a racing oval course around like a half mile or mile course. They actually used those wooden, like 4x8 sheets of plywood, and they put them down, and then they put dirt over them. And they raced on wood. I don't know why they raced on wood, but they raced on wood. That sounds kind of crazy. But they only did it for like 20 years. So it wasn't lasted very long. Of course, when you take wood and you put dirt on it and then you put water on it, you get what? You get termites, and then the wood goes away and then no more. So that was pretty. It's better just to put a dirt surface, right, and then ride on the dirt like a speedway track, and then there's no wood, and it's a lot cheaper. Because the wood in those days in 1910, the wood cost like $100,000 to build those tracks in America. I mean, $100,000 is like $1 million today. So, I mean, just think of putting a surface down and then just dirt down, and then it costs $100,000 or $1 million today. That was too much, and I don't know what they were thinking, but that's what board track racing was, is they put the wood down and then they'd race over the boards. Really crazy, I know. And they actually continued that from the 1910s to the 1920s. And then in the 1930s, there was no more board racing. They discontinued it. It was no more. That's good. That's why we don't know about it, because it was discontinued in 1930. We don't know those days. It's a long time ago. So that's cool. And like I say, the first board racing in California was at the LA Motordrome. Do you know the LA Motordrome? I don't know that place. It's in Playa del Rey district. And it was in 1910, a little before our time. I think that was a little bit before. And in 1929, the board tracks were built all over America. They were everywhere. There was like 24 these board tracks, and they've just put them all over the United States, and was racing and was making some, decent money. And then by the time 1932 came, 1932, there was no more board track. So it's kind of a weird thing where it was like a 20 years only, and then I guess the wood got rotten, the termites came, and there was no more board track racing. It's all gone. With the termite gone. But like I say, those are expensive. I mean, $100,000 to build a board track. I mean, that's a lot easy in 1910. I think that's very expensive, or 1920 or 30. That's just very expensive. But in 1925, Sprouse won the first United States Speedway Championship. He was the first Speedway champion in America, and that is something really neat. I mean, just think if you say, like, I was the very first United States Speedway champion. I mean, that's cool. And that's why we're doing this blog about Sprouse, because he was the first United States Speedway champion ever in 1925. I didn't know that before, and I was shocked. I'm like, oh, I learned something new every day. I didn't think they were racing Speedway in 1925, but they did. I was wrong. So it's great to have a little history lesson and to learn a little bit about the sport, because there's so much to know. And that's why I do these blogs, because I want to know more about it too, and then share it with you, because a lot of this information is going to be lost, and a lot of these stories. That's why we want to get some of these Speedway riders. We have Greg Hazelrod on tomorrow night. Greg has all these great stories, and it's really neat to hear about these things, because a lot of the riders are getting older and they're going to be gone, and we want to preserve some of the Speedway history with you. That's going to be fantastic. And also, like I say, he won the first world championship in Argentina, but with all the good racers, they didn't count it, though. They didn't count it. So he won this world championship. No, you didn't win it. So that was kind of funny. And not really funny, but that was kind of, different. Like, you win the championship, and then they say, no, that's not a championship. You didn't win it. Sprouse was born in where was he born? He was born in Fresno, California. Oh, near San Francisco, Fresno. We know that place, Fresno. It's past Bakersfield a little bit. And he was born there, and then he raced overseas in England and Australia. We'll talk about that. We're not there yet. But everyone keeps telling me, and also when I'm reading a lot of history about Sprouse, they tell me that he was from England. And some of my earlier blogs, I think I mentioned, like, he was an English guy racing in America. But he was not an English guy. He was not from the UK. Sprouse Elder, actually, he was from Fresno, California. He moved over to the UK to race Speedway. And then people thinking, oh, he's a very good champion. He was an amazing. He was like the Jack Milne of his day, a little before Jack. We didn't know that. and people thought he was from England, but he's from Fresno, California. Sprouts is a California writer. That is really cool. So he was an amazing writer. And us California writers, we like it when there's a lot of champions coming from California. And there is a lot of great Speedway writers from the beautiful Sunshine State of California, the Golden State. The Golden State. Remember that. So 1927, Sprouts, he was invited to go to Australia, and he was winning at the Maraboa Golden Helmet. He won that Maraboa Golden Helmet 4 times in the 20s, in the late 20s. And once in 1928, he rode the concrete 1 mile track. Like Bill Cody, he rode the Sacramento 1 mile track around that big long track on the TT races. Well, Sprouts Elder rode the 1 mile the same as Bill Cody did, but he rode it on the concrete, a concrete 1 mile. You know, you got to wear those ball tires and slide in. 1 mile, so they're going fast. Sprouts Elder was a good long track rider. So that was really great. And he got a lot of notoriety. I mean, he was winning everything. He was beating up on the Europeans, beating up on the Americans, beating up on the Australians, everybody. Sprouts Elder was #1. Don't you forget that. And anyways, he was, like I say, one of the top riders. He raced at these weekly venues, and we had Terry Ike Clanton. A lot of people watched that show of mine with Terry Ike, and Terry was telling us when he did the live stream the other day that he was an announcer, the first American announcer in Australia, and he would go to track. But in Australia, the tracks were really far. Like, it took 8 hours to get to one track, 13 hours. I mean, Australia is a big country. They're driving on a little outback roads. Probably it probably took you like 2 days to get to a track. So they were driving. The kangaroos were hopping, bong, bong, bong. Oh, it was probably a lot of fun. I wish we had Sprouts on this show. We could have a lot of good kangaroo stories about going from track to track in the 20s. I'm sure those roads were not paved very well. And there's a lot of potholes in the dirt. So that was probably a lot of fun back then. That's why we blog and we want to talk to some of the writers and stuff, because it's nice to get this information like we could have with Sprouts Elder if he was still around. But he died like 50, 60 years ago, so we don't have a chance for that one. But he raced at the Sydney Showgrounds Speedway track in Australia, and then he went to the Brisbane, Australia track. It was the exhibition grounds, they called it the exhibition grounds. And then they went ahead and did the Wayville Showgrounds, and then he went to Perth at the Claremont Speedway. So Perth had a speedway, Sydney had a speedway, Brisbane had a speedway, Wayville had a speedway. They all had speedways, and Sprouts was racing all those tracks, and he was winning and beating everybody's butts. So Sprouts was really a good rider. And Wayville, from about 2014, Wayville was the last track of all those tracks, like 4, 5, 6 tracks. Wayville was the only remaining track left in 2014. Today, we don't know. Maybe Wayville is there, maybe Wayville is not there. Who knows? But we can wave at the Wayville, that's for sure. Goodbye, Wayville. It's probably going to be gone. They're probably gone. They probably built a mall or something where Wayville is. You know what they do to the tracks. They always tear them down and make a shopping mall or houses, something. But keep the speedway tracks. We like the race tracks. That's more better. And so Sprouts won titles in South America. Also, Sprouts was an international rider everywhere. North America, South America, Europe. He raced in Australia. This was back in the 20s. So, I mean, it must have been hard to get around, in that kind of time, taking the boat, taking those rough roads and stuff. You were a trooper if you were on the circuit in those days, because I can only imagine how hard it was to get to track and going to South America, going to Australia. I mean, oh my gosh, that must have been crazy. But Sprouts did it. That's the main thing. And he, like I say, he won that unofficial world championship. He won the first world championship in Buenos Aires, Argentina. But I guess the sanctioning body said, no, 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 it's in Argentina. It doesn't count. So they wiped away Sprouts' first world championship trophy. Jeff Milne won, I think, the second one in the United States in 1937. But Sprouts won the first one before, but it got discontinued, got blackballed, and there's no more world championship for him. So that was sad. And Sprouts had a sponsor. He was under contract to a guy named A.J. Hunting. J.J. Hunting. Maybe he had a gun. I'm A.J. Hunting, Sprouts. Do you want to ride for me or not? Where are you? He was under contract with A.J. Hunting, and he was no hunter. A.J. Hunting was a successful developer of the Sydney Speedway. He was a promoter of the Sydney Showgrounds and Speedway. And he was an inventor, and he was an entrepreneur in Australia, and he made a lot of money. He was a successful guy. He sponsored Sprouts and said, Sprouts, go all over the world and beat these guys. Show them that you're the king. Everybody likes Sprouts Elder, including AJ, and he sponsored him. And AJ sadly passed away in 1946 in Australia, and so in Melbourne, Australia. So that was AJ's life. And Sprouts, like I say, he rode for AJ, and he won many championships as a rider, sponsored by AJ. He won the gold, the Argentine silver, and bronze helmets in 1929 and 1930. And in 1928, he also rode in England, in the UK, and was one of the most popular riders on the British League. And he was riding in the country. He rode all over the place. And when he rode, they would give him a show-up money. So every time Sprouts raced, all the promoters wanted him because he drew all the people. And they would give Sprouts £100 show-up money plus money he earned, with his races, his scratch, his handicap, his semis, his main event wins, all those wins and all those races he was in. He got money for each win he did, plus the £100. So he probably cleaned up pretty good, probably like $400 or $500 a night, and that's like $1,000. And in 1920s or something, that was a lot of money. Making like $10,000 a night when he raced. So Sprouts was rich, and he was a very good rider, and he made a lot of money. So that was really great for him. One time, Sprouts made 350 pounds. So that's like a lot of money, and he made that in show-up money only in one day. Plus, he raced 3 different races in one day. So he'd race like early in the morning somewhere, and then he would go to the next track at noon or something, and then he'd race the track at nighttime. So Sprouts raced 3 different events in 3 different stadiums in one day. So he won 350 pounds show-up money, but he made a lot of money if he won those races. But I'm not sure how he did. I can't quote you. Don't quote me on that. But he made a lot of money just showing up. I mean, that was really good. And he raced 3 tracks in one day. So Sprouts Elder was a rider. There's no doubt about that. And his 3 years in England, Sprouts earned over 50 pounds. And that's English money. And in America, that was probably $150,000, $200,000 in those days in 1928. But today, I mean, that would be like $500,000 or $1 million or something like that. So Sprouts was big time, and he was making the big money. And when Sprouts would come to some of these tracks, they would be like 30 or 40,000 people to go in attendance to watch Sprouts Elder. He was famous, and he had a big name. In our modern days, we don't even hardly know the name, but in the early days, Sprouts Elder was like, really big. He was like the Bruce Penhall of Speedway, or, Greg Hancock. He was a very famous name. Everybody knows those names. And in the 1928 time, Sprouts Elder was that same kind of name. He was big time, and he commanded a lot of money and people. So that was really great for him. And it was the heyday of the early days of Speedway. That's why there was so much money back then. The heyday was before the 1930s when they had the World Championship in '36, and so Speedway was big before it started, kind of. So I didn't know all that. So that's pretty cool. And his Sprouts popularity grew and it grew and it grew. I mean, like I say, the people love Sprouts. The newspaper reporters, the TV or whatever. I don't know if there was TV back then, but the newspapers for sure. The reporters loved Sprouts Elder. Him on the papers all the time, and they talked about him because everybody liked who? Sprouts Elder. He was like the legend over there, and they called him the greatest showman ever. Sprouts Elder was considered by the papers as the #1 greatest showman ever in 1928. But today, they don't say that one. That was a long time ago. But he was that good. I mean, the guy was amazing. And he won a lot of titles when he raced in England. I mean, he was a good rider. He raced against the best in the world, and he was smoking their butts. And that was really good. In 1928, he was racing also in England, and he won the Golden Helmet at White City in Manchester in 1928, like I said. And then he won the Golden Gauntlet Award, the trophy, the cup, and he won the West Ham Championship at the West Ham Speedway. Also, the Silver Wheel Championship, he won that, and the Silver Sashes at the Wimbledon. The Silver Sashes. The Silver Sashes at the Wimbledon Stadium. Say that 20 times. Silver Sashes, Silver Sashes, Silver Sashes. Oh, that's very funny. I don't think they have that one no more, so we'll forget about that. And the Silver Belt at the Custom House. He won the Silver Belt. And the Golden Helmet at Leicester. The Golden Helmet at Leicester. Hello, love. How are you? I won the Golden Helmet at Leicester. So he won the Golden Helmet at Leicester. And he won the Scottish Gold and Silver Helmet in 1929. He won the Scottish Gold Medal Helmet. He was a Scottish writer. Yes, he was. No, he was not a Scottish. He was from Fresno, California. Fresno, remember that. He was no Scottish. He was no English. He was a California boy. So, 1930, he rode for the Southampton Saints. Do you remember the Southampton Saints? Sprouts was a saint. That's a very beautiful title. He was like a beautiful saint. I lived in Southampton about 6 months before, not the same time that Sprouts was there, but a little later. And Southampton's a nice city, and I didn't even know when I was there they had a speedway track, and then I'm like investigating it, and Sprouts rode there like what, 1920s, 30s, and it continued all the way until like the early 60s, like 63 or 64. Barry Briggs was racing for the Southampton Saints at the time, and then he liked it. You know, he had moved a few teams, and then he was happy at the Southampton Stadium. It was a long, big track, smooth, fast. It was really a beautiful kind of narrow track. It was really nice, and those boys were going fast at Southampton. It was a rider's track, and then the promoter came up to Barry Briggs and said, Barry, we're selling this land to a developer. We're going to build a shopping mall. I know where that shopping mall is. It's a beautiful location, like down the hill in Southampton, right in the center of town. And I think that's where they have the Speedway, but I'm not positive, but that's where they have the mall. And in 1963 or 4, they started construction of that mall that I'm telling you about. I used to go to that mall. I would rather go to the Speedway track than the mall, actually, but it's too late because it was already when I was there. But that's where they had the Speedway track, and they closed the Speedway. Southampton never had a Speedway team again that I know of. The Saints were dead, so sad. The Saints are supposed to be like angelic, and they're supposed to be alive, but they sold the land for money, and then there's no more Speedway in Southampton. That's very sad. I would have loved to have gone to some Speedway races and seen the Southampton Stadium, but no more. I can't do that one. You can't bring the dead back to life, and that stadium was dead like a long time when I got there, so no way. Elder rode his first Star Riders Championship for the runner-up and the Speedway World Championship in 1929. And he was racing for the World Championship. They had a World Championship, I guess, in 1929, the Star Riders Championship. And he actually got beat out in the semifinals by an Australian named Vic Huxley. Vic Huxley beat our boy Sprouts Elder. We don't like you, Vic. You should not beat Sprouts because Sprouts is growing very tall. So we didn't like Vic beating our guy, but well, we can't do anything about that. That was a long time ago. And so in 1930s, when Sprouts returned home to California, he helped organize American Speedway. Early day 1930s Speedway. He got along with Jack Milne, Cordy Milne, and Lammy Lamarocks, Wilbur Lamarocks. And they started promoting Speedway, trying to get Speedway going. I noticed in the World War II, when they started the World War II, they tried to do that for a little while. I'm not sure how well that went, but they were trying to promote it. Also, we have the first recorded Speedway race in America, May 31st, 1933. Remember that day, May 31st. Not May 32nd, but May 31st. At the Navy Field in San Diego, California. Sprouts Elder raced that thing. He probably promoted it too. He was number 4. He was number 4 on his back. He could have been number 1 pretty easy. He was good. But they had Jack Milne too, and they had Cordy, and then they had Lammy. I mean, those guys were all like amazing. And actually, Sprouts was pretty amazing too. They had a good lineup. I mean, you have Sprouts, you have Jack, you have Cordy, and you have Lammy. Good luck, good luck to the rookies. That's all I can say. And also that night they had Shorty Campbell. Do you remember Shorty Campbell? He was a short guy. I'm sure like Sprouts was big, so he was sprouting, and Shorty was short, and he was shrinking. Shorty was probably a little guy. That's why they call him Shorty, because he was little. So if you're tall, you're called Sprouts. If you're small, they call you Shorty. Shorty Pants. You're Shorty Pants. So I don't like that name, Shorty. I'd rather be called Sprouts than Shorty. That doesn't sound very good. Sprouts raced in event number 4 of the handicap that race, that May 31st, 1933 race event in San Diego at the Navy Yard. Some of the people actually remember where that Navy Yard. I told some of my friends, do you know that the first Speedway race in America was at the Navy Yard? And my friends go, yeah, I remember. Yeah, I heard all about it. I said, what? You know that one? Yeah, it's at the Navy Yard in San Diego because that's where they have all the Navy ships and stuff. They have a Speedway track there. I want to see that. I never got to ride there. I would like to see that one. So he raced in event number 4 in the handicap and event 11 with the scratch racing. So he was in event 4, and then he was racing event 11, and then event 5 was actually a track. In the old days, I don't know why they did that. Somebody could tell me like why they did these like the fastest lap. Maybe they do like 2 laps or something like that, and then they would take a stopwatch and then they would record like how fast the guy from the starting line went around the track. Like 28 seconds or whatever it was. And they had a big deal, and he was doing that. And I don't know why they do that, but I guess the guys, if they do well, like let's say at the end of the year, they go, yeah, like hold on, blow on their hand. Oh yeah, I was the fastest lap. Oh, very good. Party. Who cares? Who cares? It was the fastest time. Like, we don't care about that. And so anyway, so that was the fastest lap, and I'm sure he got a fast lap. And he raced in event number 18 that night, and it was like the match race. But he was so good, you had qualified to race Sprouts Elder. So I was expecting Cordy or Jack to be in that, but there was this 2 guys I never heard of in event number 8, and then they were Earl Ferrand and Mindy Wallen, number 3. Mindy Wallen. Do you know Earl Ferrand and Mindy Wallen? I don't know those guys. I have never heard of them. And so they had a match race and then the winner of that match race had the joy of getting their butt kicked by Sprouse Elder in event number 18. They could go to the match race and get killed by Sprouse Elder. What a lucky thing to have happen. I don't want to race that guy. I wouldn't want to race him. Actually, he's good. So anyways, they went ahead and I'm sure Sprouse won that race. I'm sure he killed those guys. I mean, I put big money that Sprouse didn't lose to those guys. And that would blow me away if he did. So Sprouse helped promote the tracks, and he was really sort of a famous rider. And then he decided to get a real job. Sprouse kind of decided he would, get a job and, have a career. So he went ahead and applied and got a job working for the California Highway Patrol. Sprouse was a highway patrolman. He was a CHIP, CHIPS. Do you know the other Speedway rider in about 1982 or 3 that was a highway patrol movie star? Yeah, that was Bruce the Fox. Bruce was a CHIP too. So we have Sprouse Elder, who was a CHIP, and we have Bruce the Fox Penhall, who was a CHIP. But Sprouse was a real CHIP. I mean, he was like a hardcore, like, I give you a ticket kind of guy. And Bruce Penhall was a Hollywood actor CHIP. So they were a little different. One was a Hollywood actor and one was a gritty, nitty-gritty, worker. And Sprouse helped promote Speedway. He would get like the California Highway Patrol to sponsor the Speedway races. And so he was actively even getting money into the Speedway, even if he was working his full-time job. So that was pretty nice of Sprouse Elder to be thinking and having his heart in Speedway when he was working for the CHP in California. And one day, a terrible thing happened to Sprouse as he got in a horrible accident while he was on duty. I don't know exactly the extent of it. Maybe he got hit by a car or something happened, but Sprouse almost died, and he got a serious injury, and it forced him to retire from the police force. So it was a devastating injury. Like I said, life-threatening. He was lucky to be alive, and he almost died, but he survived, and he retired at that time as a CHP officer. So that was a sad situation for him. And he just, really had a bad experience with that. And he was involved in the AMA after his injury, and he was a member of the competition committee of the AMA. So he was very active in Speedway and in AMA. He gave his time to motorcycles. He really loved motorcycles. His heart was all motorcycles. Sprouse Elder was an amazing guy, really. He's like one of those guys like, Ole Olson, who gave his whole life to Speedway, like Ivan Major, who raced and, he promoted Speedway, gave his whole life to Speedway, developing young riders. And Sprouse Elder, the same, even though a little different. He gave his whole life to Speedway by sponsoring Speedway and helping AMA and being involved in racing his whole life until his passing. So he actually was very famous that way. And he was inducted in the AMA Hall of Fame in 1998. And the Fresno, where he grew up, he didn't grow up in England or Australia. He grew up in Fresno, California. Remember that one about, when you hear Sprouse Elder, always remember Fresno, California. And he was inducted to the Fresno Hall of Fame in 1962, just a few years after his passing. They honored Sprouse as an inductee to the Hall of Fame in Fresno. And then later on, 1998 into the AMA Hall of Fame. And actually, Sprouse, he had a really bad sort of experience because he was investing his money and he actually lost all of his money. All of his money he lost. And he kind of, I guess, became poor, right? You lose all your money, you're going to be poor. And he lost all of his money. I guess he had like a mining expedition or something like investment, and he dumped all of his money to do mine gold or diamonds or something, and it turned out no good, and he lost everything. So all that money Sprouse worked hard all of his life to earn, it was like gone, like poof, money is slippery. It comes and then it's slippery. And Sprouts lost everything. So that was his biggest, he's a champion all the time and then one bad thing and then everything gone. And Sprouts' life really changed at that moment. So very sad that he had such a traumatic experience after being such a great champion all those years. That's very sad. And then Sprouts, he ended up dying in 1957, and that was before my time. But he died in 57 at the age of 53 years old. His wife, his beloved wife, I guess he loved his wife a lot, and she had passed away just shortly before that, and then he passed away after that. So, wish Sprouts Elder, rest in peace. Rest in peace, Sprouts Elder, because we want to remember the legend that he is, and he's just an amazing writer, and I'm sure he was a great human being. I don't know what he was like because I never met him, but I'm sure if he was a good person, like he was a good writer, Sprouts Elder was amazing. So he was really great. And he was the first American, like I say, to win the United States championship in 1925 and the first unofficial world champion, but not really, because it got taken away. But unofficially, he was the first world champion, and that's really cool. And his talent in Speedway was off the charts. This guy could ride. He could ride with, if he's riding today, he could ride with the best of them today. He could be a GP rider. I mean, this guy was that good. He was top dog. He was cream of the crop. And today we honor the memory of Sprouts Elder because not much is said about him. There's not much around on the internet, but right here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to honor that great guy. And we're very honored to honor him because he's such an amazing, and he was a superstar, and his name was Sprouts Elder. Don't forget that name because it's really great. And we're going to go ahead and have some more great writers. We're going to have Greg Hazerat tomorrow night at 5 o'clock California time. Greg is really a great guy. I mean, if you're going to watch one of my shows, you got to watch Greg Hazerat tomorrow because that guy, he was a good writer and a solid writer. He wasn't like Mike Bass or Rick Woods, but he raced just below those guys. He was a D1 writer, and he was a hard charger. And Greg Hazerat was just a full-blown racer, and that guy's hardcore. And I got to know Greg, and he's cool, and that guy's awesome. So if you want to see a good show, tune in tomorrow for Greg Hazerat. And then we have, like I say, Larry Hoffman. He was one of the first Speedway announcers at Costa Mesa, and he just was a legend. I mean, this guy is the biggest name in Speedway, motocross, all the sports. Larry Huffman did it all, and he's really good. And we're going to have a lot more people coming on the show. Hopefully Bruce Penhall, and we'll try to get some more really good guests. We have a lot of people lined up, actually. Just got to get them on the show. And so thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and be notified because we're going to have some great shows. And thank you, like I say, for watching the show today, the Sprouts Elder Show. And we sure had a good time talking about Sprouts. We really, really, admire this legend. I mean, this guy was a legend, the first United States Speedway champion ever, U.S. champion. That's incredible. And that's why we did this show, to honor this special human being. And we just say rest in peace for Sprouts Elder. So thank you so much. And go ahead and, like I say, and like the show and go ahead and stay on the two wheels. I was doing some motorcycle riding today, so I'm done now. But stay on the two wheels, not one wheel. If you do one wheel, don't crash. Stay up. And we certainly enjoy motorcycles, motorsports, speedway, everything. And we enjoy doing this show and sharing it with you. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.